ladies and gentlemen, to the She Knows Pro Football podcast. Once again, I'm Alice, aka the NFL Girl. And once again, I got my good friend Dominick here with me. Dominick, how you doing today?
Alice not doing too bad. Even though I didn't expect it, the Saints were able to pull out the victory over the Seahawks last week with the help of Taysom Hill. So I was glad to see him get the victory there. Now let's see if we can keep going forward and getting some victories.
It was an impressive win. I love seeing Taysom Hill getting out there and doing his thing. So hopefully Saints can win. Meanwhile, my Broncos are still trash, and I don't expect better out of them this week. So let's get started. We are in week 6, you guys, and we are competing with the MLB playoffs. So we better get this rolling. We are starting with our Thursday night matchup. We got the 1-4 Washington Commanders headed to Chicago to face the 2-3 Bears. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, this isn't a good way to get started. This is ugly against ugly. Both these teams are bad. The Bears, I don't think they're as good as their 2-3 record. Washington, I think, is what their record says they are. They almost won the game last week against Tennessee. They drove down the field on the last drive of the game before Carson Wentz threw a 2-yard interception in the end zone that cost them the game at the end. This one's going to be ugly. It's going to be a close game. I do think Washington is slightly better. I think they've played better this year, even though they have the worst record. So I'm going to take Washington to go into Chicago and beat Justin Fields this week.
These are two god-awful teams in tough divisions. And I feel sorry for both of these teams. No, I don't. I don't feel sorry for Washington because I don't like Dan Snyder. Listen, Carson Wentz, again, he is who we thought he was. He's not a great QB. He has decent players around him, decent receivers. Chicago, meanwhile, Justin Fields, I tell you guys this every week. I love this kid. I just don't feel like he has a good O-line, and he doesn't have great weapons around him. Darryl Mooney, every so often, you'll see something out of him, flashes of what he could be. If they had a better O-line, it feels had more time to complete passes. But the way they're looking right now, I just know that they may not get out of the basement again in that division. It'll be a fight for the bottom between them and the Lions, which I feel so bad to say. Meanwhile, Commanders, I think they have just enough to get the win here. It's not going to be a high-scoring game. It's not going to be an impressive game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 9-6, 12-9, something to that effect. So taking Commanders here in this game. Next up, we got the 3-2 San Francisco 49ers headed to Atlanta to face the 2-3 Falcons. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, the Falcons could have won last week, but they got the first of very many bad calls last week against Tom Brady with that unnecessary roughness that cost them to get off the field and be able to get the ball back. They ended up losing by 6 points. San Francisco went into Carolina and really beat up the Carolina Panthers, causing them to fire their head coach, Matt Rule. They stayed on the East Coast because obviously they're not going to fly back and then fly back to Atlanta again. I do think that they have a solid team here. We obviously know what Deebo Samuels can be with George Kittle there, with Jimmy Garoppolo doing his thing right now. The defense is still pretty good as well. I don't really like what Atlanta has on offense at this point. We don't know if Kyle Pitts is going to play again. We know that Cordero Patterson is on IR. So I do think San Francisco is going to be able to go into Atlanta and beat the Falcons on this one.
49ers, I love Jimmy G's weapons. Jimmy G has looked good with the weapons that he has. Again, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. It's a solid team. Meanwhile, the Falcons, the loss of Cordell Patterson, I knew was going to be significant for them, especially with Kyle Pitts' numbers being as off as they have been. So as much as I hope that Atlanta is able to do something with Marcus Mariota, because I want him to land somewhere and have a good career somewhere, I don't think that this week they can get it done, especially with the way the 49ers defense has been playing the last couple of weeks. If you saw them in that Rams game, you know what I'm talking about. So I definitely got to give this game to the 49ers. I don't think the Falcons have enough to get it done. Next up, we got the 2-3 New England Patriots headed to Cleveland to face the 2-3 Browns. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to take the Browns here. I just think that they're a little bit better than the Patriots are. The Patriots are going to be on the road. I know that this could be a revenge Bill Belichick game since the Browns fired him before he went to New England. I just think that the Browns right now, they're playing better. They have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt there in the backfield. That's just going to cause havoc for the Patriots defense. We have to see what happens with Amari Cooper. He's really come on in the past 2 weeks. So as long as he's able to keep doing that, I do like this Browns offense against this Patriots defense. And I don't think the Patriots defense has much for a Browns offense who is going to have Jadeveon Clowney as well as Myles Garrett back there. So I'm going to take the Browns on the home field here.
Patriots have looked atrocious in the losses that they've taken this season. I know some of that has been because they've been plagued with some injuries, in particular at the QB spot. Browns, meanwhile, again, I hate having to pick them because I do not root for this team at all whatsoever. In saying that, I'm not saying that I can't root for Jacoby Brissett and hope that he doesn't play well there. And he is. He's been playing pretty well. He has good receivers in the backfield, can always rely on Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I've seen Donovan Peoples-Jones step up last week. I think this team will, especially on their defense, will be able to handle the Patriots. So definitely feel like the Browns are going to get this game done. So taking them here in this game. Next up, we got the 3-2 New York Jets headed to Green Bay to face the 3-2 Packers. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Jets are coming in on a 2-game winning streak. Think this is where it ends. Green Bay is going to be mad after an ugly loss in London. That should have been an easy victory against the Giants last week. They lost. They did absolutely nothing in the second half to get that loss. They abandoned the run game with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, who were both dominating the Giants in the first half. They just totally went away from them in the second half. I don't think that's going to happen in this game. I know the Jets had 5 rushing touchdowns last week, and the Packers defense, their Achilles heel is rushing, but I don't think they're going to get 5 rushing touchdowns this week. Aaron Rodgers in the last 12 games after a loss is 12-0 straight up and 12-0 against the spread. I don't think it's close this week. It did just come out that he is going to be sitting out practice today with a thumb injury, but that it's not expected to keep him out of the game. I don't think it will either. We know how much of a trooper he is. So I'm going to take the Packers to win this game at home against the Jets.
Kudos to the Jets for being able to get into the win column. I've been impressed with how they looked the last 2 games, in particular in the run game. Kudos to them. And definitely I saw them pick it up on the defense. Packers caught a shocking L in London last week. I don't know what happened in the second half, what the hell was going on there, but I know they'll get it back together. In particular, they're playing there at Lambeau Field. And that run game they have behind Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon is amazing. And Aaron Rodgers is not going to want to take an L to 2 New York teams back to back. That's not going to happen. Definitely got to give the Packers their here at home. Next up, we got the 2-3 Jacksonville Jaguars headed to Indianapolis to face the 2-1 Colts. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, I was as excited as everybody was about the Jaguars after they trumped the Chargers a couple weeks ago. They're just as down on them now. They lost 2 weeks ago in an ugly, rainy game to Philadelphia. They lost last week against Houston, which they haven't beaten in 9 games now, so that's why they lost to them. This team, much like the NFC West, has teams that just beat each other for no reason. We don't know what's going to happen here with the Colts. We know in Jacksonville they can't win, but in Indianapolis they tend to do decent as well. So it's going to be a very tough game. If Jonathan Taylor's back, it's going to make all the difference here. I do think he is going to be back in this game. I don't know if Naheem Hines is going to be in there, but Alec Pierce is really taking a step up as the wide receiver 2 there behind Michael Pittman. Matthew Ryan is going to have to do something in this game. I think he will. It's going to be a little bit too much for Jacksonville. Seems like Trevor Lawrence has been regressing just the tiniest bit in the past couple weeks again. I don't like that for him or for Jacksonville, so I'm going to take the Colts here to win at home.
These division rivals, in particular in the AFC South, really tend to play each other very tough. So I'm expecting a very tough matchup between them again in this situation. I like Trevor Lawrence. I'm not impressed with what I've seen out of him last week. I don't know what exactly is happening there. I do like their one game behind James Robinson. I like the matchup that Lawrence has with Marvin Jones more than anyone else. I'm starting to see better numbers out of them. However, they're going to Indy and facing them in Indianapolis. Now, if they were playing in Jacksonville, I probably would lean towards Jacksonville, but playing in Indianapolis, Matt Ryan has to prove something, and it has to prove that he is not washed up. There's been a couple of games where it very much looked like he's very much washed up. And so he's got something to prove. He's got Michael Pittman. He's got other good receivers. If Jonathan Taylor's back, they're going to be hard to stop. So definitely going to take the Colts here because they're at home. Next up, we got the 4-1 Minnesota Vikings headed to Miami to face the 3-2 Dolphins. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Dolphins are coming into this one on a 2-game losing streak. They just got blown out by the Jets last week, 40-17. Minnesota barely overcame the Chicago Bears last week, but that was because they were coming off the road in a London game. People coming back from London tend to be very weak on defense, especially when they don't take a bye. That happened last week against the Bears. I think their defense is going to be better this week. The only issue I have is that it is going to be in Miami. We know that Miami is where teams go to die, especially good teams. They just go there, they feel the heat, and for some reason they have that Miami fever, and they tend to play down to the competition no matter how good or bad the Dolphins are. But in this case, I think it's still going to be enough to win. The Dolphins aren't going to have Tua Tagovailoa in this game. It's probably going to be Teddy Bridgewater. If not, it's going to be Skylar Thomas from Kansas State, the rookie. With that said, we don't know if Tyreek Hill's going to be full go in this game. He's probably going to play, but he does have a foot injury, so he's going to be a little bit limited. So it's going to be tough for them to anybody to make a play in this game. But I am still going to take Minnesota just because it is a 1:00 game, so we don't have to worry about the primetime factor. And Kirk Cousins still has Dalvin Cook and Joe Jefferson as well as Adam Thielen. I just think that trio of players with Kirk Cousins is going to be enough to get the win, even with a hangover that might be coming in Miami.
Dolphins, the problem with them, the reason I can't pick them in this game is because of the quarterback situation. We know Tua isn't going to be back. We're not 100% sure that Teddy Bridgewater is going to make it back. So the question mark at quarterback really concerns me, and that's the only reason I can't pick them. Vikings, they have really good weapons. Dalvin Cook is always reliable. He's got Justin Jefferson. He's got Adam Thielen. Kirk Cousins is always my question mark there, unfortunately. Defense has been slagging just a little bit, but playing against Miami with that huge question mark there at the QB position, and in particular, we're not 1,000% sure that Tyreek is going to make it back. I definitely got to take the Vikings here. Next up, we got the 2 and 3 Cincinnati Bengals headed to New Orleans to face the 2 and 3 Saints. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, this is another one we don't really know who's going to be there. We don't know if it's going to be Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton. We don't know if Michael Thomas is going to get back for this game. He said he's going to play, but we don't know. We've heard that before. Chris Olave had a concussion last week. We don't know if he's going to be settled for this game or not. We know that their safety, Marcus May, is going to be out. Marshawn Lattimore could also miss this game, so they're missing some of their best players on offense and defense. With that said, the Bengals aren't really missing anybody. Joe Mixon had 5.6 yards per carry last week against the Ravens on Sunday night. We know they still have Jamar Chase there. T. Higgins is a little injured, but if he doesn't play, they're still going to have Tyler Boyd able to step up there. But it does look like T. Higgins is going to play. I just love what Joe Burrow does, going back down to Louisiana where he won the national championship with LSU. As much as I am a Saints fan, obviously, I do think that the Bengals are going to go in there and probably win this one by double digits.
We're getting to the time of year where these banged up teams are going to really struggle. And New Orleans is really banged up right now. Maybe in a couple of weeks, if we get a couple of players healed up, it'll look a little different for them. But right now, as banged up as they are, as many players are out or questionable at least, it would be hard for me to pick them in this situation going against the Bengals, who are completely healthy right now and looking really good in the games that they're winning. Even in their losses, most of them, they've looked pretty good. I love Jamar Chase. I love Joe Burrow. I love the matchup the two of them have. Joe Mixon in the backfield, always impressive. New Orleans, because of all of these injuries, again, same thing. I can't pick them while they're so banged up, and I don't know who's going to be starting going into this game. So definitely taking the Bengals in this game. Next up, we got the 3 and 2 Baltimore Ravens headed to New York to face the 4 and 1 Giants. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, my biggest thing with this game is this game's going to be an over. That's one thing I'm confident about. For the rest of it, I'm not so sure. I know the Ravens are coming in here as almost a touchdown favorite. I don't really think they deserve that, especially with their defense playing as bad as it is. Their secondary has been doing nothing this year. They give up the most pass yards in the NFL. They've now just lost Marcus Peters to IR with a wrist injury as well, so we're not going to see him either. Obviously, the Giants don't really have a whole lot that can be dangerous against that secondary, but they do have Saquon Barkley, who, even though he did go out last week with a shoulder injury, came back by the end of the game, and he is going to be in there. We'll see what he can do, as well as Daniel Jones. We'll see what their offensive skill players they can actually use out there, whether it be Slayton or somebody else to actually catch some passes. But I do think it's going to be just enough. So they are going to score a lot of points. But Lamar Jackson, to me, is the key here. He's going to get this game moving. It's going to go over, and it is going to be a Ravens victory. But I think it's going to probably be a very close game.
Giants, it's shocking to me that they're 4-1, considering some of the injuries that they've suffered this season, in particular losing Sterling Shepard for the season. But Saquon has looked incredible. He's looked so good this season, and I think that's what's been keeping them afloat. And the defense has been stepping up for them in the last couple of weeks, especially. Ravens, meanwhile, listen, Lamar Jackson, I say it every week, Lamar Jackson has something to play for, and that's a long-term deal. So he is going to go out there every week and ball his butt off. And I expect more of that. Now, do they have secondary issues? Of course they are going to have secondary issues with losing Marcus Peters, but I think that they can overcome that if they could just put points up on the board. And the way that Lamar Jackson is playing right now, Lamar Jackson is playing to an MVP level. If we if the season ended right now, I would have to vote for him for MVP. And I know that's surprising to say, but that's just where we are right now. Considering that some of the injuries that the Giants are dealing with right now, of the two teams, I can't pick against Lamar right now because I know what he's playing for, and I know he's going to ball his butt off. So I'm going to take the Ravens here in this game. Next up, we got the 3-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers headed to Pittsburgh to face the 1-4 Steelers. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, it was for two former powerhouses. This one's a pretty easy game to pick. Pittsburgh, the only game they've won this year was in week 1. They won an overtime game on a field goal against Cincinnati in a game where everybody was missing field goals left and right, and they were lucky to win. Tampa Bay has been playing not that good, but they're still playing a lot better than Pittsburgh. I know this game is on the road, but Tampa Bay should get the easy victory here, and they should probably be anybody's play in a survivor pool as well.
Steelers look atrocious right now, and I can't even tell you what it is that has them looking as bad as they are, because we've already pulled Mitchell Trubisky, and now we've gone to Kenny Pickett, and we should have seen some vast improvement, and we're not. It's still a struggling team, even with Najee Harris there, even with Deontay Johnson there. We're not seeing what we should be seeing at this point in the season from the Steelers, or at least what we were hoping we would see by this point. We thought that we had the post-Big Ben era and that it would be, something impressive to see, and so far it hasn't been. It's been a disaster. Buccaneers, listen, it's Tom Brady, you guys. Anytime you have Tom Brady out there, you kind of got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's not getting it done completely. Obviously, he has some off-field distractions going on there, but I think he's doing just enough on the field with the receivers he has, with the run game he has, to get these wins. And going against the Steelers and the way they're playing right now, yeah, I got to take the Buccaneers here. I just think that they could get it done, even though they're playing in Pittsburgh. Next up, we got the 1-4 Carolina Panthers headed to Los Angeles to face the 2-3 Rams. Dominic, who you got?
The Rams are not very good right now, but Jalen Ramsey started playing good last week. He held CeeDee Lamb to one catch for 9 yards in the game against Dallas, even though Dallas ended up losing the game. Cooper Kupp is still playing great. He had the only touchdown last week. He had a 75-yard catch from Matthew Stafford. We'll have to see what Cam Akers can do in this game. We don't know if Christian McCaffrey is going to be in this game because, obviously there's those reports coming out, and reports can say anything, but that there's a chance Christian McCaffrey might get traded to the Bills. I don't see it happening, but there are reports out there about it. Now we know that Matt Rule's not there either. So Steve Wilks is going to be there. Are they going to get a 1 week spark here like a lot of teams do when they get a new coach? I don't think it's going to happen here against the Rams. I think Aaron Darnold's just too good. Jalen Ramsey's just too good. I think Matthew Stafford's going to have a fun game against this Carolina Panthers defense, which is decent, but it's not good. So I do think they're going to be able, since they are at home, they are actually the biggest favorite this week at 10.5 points. I don't know if they're going to get to that just because I think the Panthers might actually do a little bit of something here, but with PJ Walker, who knows what's going to happen? He could throw 7 interceptions this week, or he could throw 7 touchdowns. I don't think it's going to be 7 touchdowns. I think it's going to be closer to 7 interceptions, and I'm going to take the Rams in this one.
We have reached the post-Matt Rule era in Carolina. We all knew this was coming. So Matt Rule has no clue. He was way in over his head and had no clue what he was doing there in Carolina. Baker was a disaster. Sam Darnold was a disaster. We're now at P.J. Walker due to the injuries to the two of them. Can P.J. Walker get it done with Steve Wilks as his head coach? Because I like Steve Wilks, I would like to see it get it done, but I'm going to be a realist here and tell you absolutely not. I'm not seeing anything out of Robbie Anderson. Only every so often do I see anything out of DJ Moore. They've been relying very heavily on Christian McCaffrey, and now they're talking about trading him. I don't think that they will, because all of their numbers come from Christian McCaffrey. Here, they're going up against the Rams. Rams and their losses have looked atrocious. It's the defense hasn't done enough to get it done, and that's been their bigger problem. I think in this case, because of the way Carolina is playing right now, I understand they might get a spark and try and play better for Steve Wilks. I don't think they have enough weapons to get it done. That's the problem. It isn't that they won't try to get it done. I don't think that they have the weapons capable of stopping Matt Stafford with Cooper Kupp. That's the truth of it at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, they're in LA. I got to take the Rams here. Next up, we got the 2-3 Arizona Cardinals headed to Seattle to face the 2-3 Seahawks. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, this game's weird because we don't even know when it's going to be played. It could be at 4 o'clock. It could be at 5:30, depending on if the Mariners actually have a game that day. But I think the best player in this game, obviously, well, maybe this year it's Geno Smith. I think overall it's Kyler Murray. We know that DeAndre Hopkins is still not going to be back here, but we saw what Marquise Brown could do. He had a touchdown against the Eagles last week. James Conner hopefully will be in for this game. He got a little banged up against the Eagles last week, but he should be back. But Eno Benjamin looked good even when he wasn't there last week. Seattle with Geno Smith looked really, really good so far this year, even though they're only 2-3. They looked really good in the loss against the Saints last week. Geno Smith and DK Metcalf, as well as Tyler Lockett, have a great connection right now. It's going to be tough without Rashad Penny being there. He is going to miss the rest of the year with a broken leg. These teams tend to play very close games. I remember a couple years ago, there was an ugly 9-6 shootout that they played in Arizona. I think this one's going to be a little bit higher scoring than that, but maybe not totally, not up to like 60, 70 points, but it could get into the 30s or 40s. But I do think Arizona is going to win this game, even though it is on the road in Seattle.
I can't wait for Nuke to get back. I know that part of the reason that the Cardinals have been losing is they need a true WR1. I appreciate that Hollywood finally stepped up and did even more last week, which truly helps them. But Hollywood, at the end of the day, to me, is a WR2. So Nuke getting back, hopefully as early as next week, is going to make a difference for them. That's just my opinion. And I love Kyler Murray. And if James Conner's healthy, definitely hoping that they can get something done in that ground game. Seahawks, meanwhile, Geno Smith has looked very impressive. Again, even in their losses, they're not getting blown out. So I'm always impressed at what I'm seeing out of the matchup that he has with Tyler Lockett and also with DK, who's really stepped it up this season, which I appreciate very much. These teams always play each other tough because, you know, they're division rivals. In this particular case, they're playing in Seattle. Seattle, because the city of Seattle is in the playoffs right now, I feel like some of that good energy coming over from the Mariners is going to slide over to the Seahawks. So I'm going to take the Seahawks in this game. Next up, we got the 4-1 Buffalo Bills headed to Kansas City to face the 4-1 Chiefs. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, this is, a rematch of one of the greatest games ever played. The game last year in the playoffs that went to overtime. Both these quarterbacks play outstanding football against each other. Patrick Mahomes has the edge right now, 3-1 in the series, but they both have passer ratings of over 100. They're both great in this matchup. This is the first time ever that Patrick Mahomes has been an underdog at home. After 41 home games, it's the first time he's ever been an underdog. He is 7-1 as an underdog overall. I just think this one's going to be a little bit too much. I think Buffalo's going to get out on top. They're not going to have to come back like they did last year. The defense for the Chiefs is what really bothers me. I know the Bills defense has some injuries on it, but they're still playing at a high level. The Chiefs are not playing at such a high level on defense. The offense is good. The Bills defense, I think, is just better. Their offense is much better. It's the best unit on the field. And I do think that they're actually going to go into Kansas City and halfway avenge the loss from the year. It's a regular season game, so it doesn't really matter. But they are going to be able to go into Kansas City and win this game.
This is going to be such a good game. This might be the game of the week because of the rivalry that these two teams now have going on with one another. The Bills are a phenomenal team. I love this team so much. I love Stephon Diggs and the matchup that Josh Allen has with him. I love Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis has turned into a true. I can't even say that Stephon and Gabe are 1 and 2. I would like to say 1A and 1B because that's how much Gabe Davis has stepped up. In particular, I'd say like in the last season and a half. So love what I see out of them. So good. But I just totally love the Bills. Chiefs, meanwhile, my goodness, the game that they played and that comeback that they came from and what Travis Kelce was able to do last week is something to behold. This team has showed they could come back from 17 down and still beat your butt. That's incredible to see because not a lot of teams can do that. And they did it flawlessly from start to finish. So I love what this team can do. I'm always impressed by them. They're playing at home in Kansas City. This is going to be a tough match on both sides. So it's going to be a high-flying game as far as I'm concerned. At the end of the day, only because they're at home, I'm going to take the Chiefs here.
Yeah, here's another fun fact for you about Travis Kelce. He was the first player in NFL history to have 4 touchdown catches on 90 yards or less in a game, and he did it on 25 yards.
That still just blows my mind on how few yards he got and still got away with 4 touchdowns in that game. Go Al Bundy. Next up, we got the 4-1 Dallas Cowboys headed to Philly to face the 5-0 Eagles. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, I can't pick against the Eagles, especially at home, especially against Dallas. I think Dallas is playing really good right now. Cooper Rush is playing out of this world. He's 4-0 as a starter this year, 5-0 overall. He does have a good connection with CeeDee Lamb, although it didn't really take effect last week, even though they were able to win the game. Tony Pollard is playing over his head as well. He had a 57-yard touchdown run last week. Micah Parsons could be the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He's just playing as a monster right now. He did tweak his hamstring last week, but he should be good to go as well. Just because it's not Dak Prescott, it is Cooper Rush. I do think that the Eagles defense, which has been playing great so far this year, is going to be able to get to him. The offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys is beat up a little bit. So I do think that Brandon Graham and company is going to be able to get some pressure on Cooper Rush and keep him in the pocket, make it this a low scoring, ugly game. I think the Eagles are going to run the ball more since they did pass the ball quite a bit last week. Dallas is probably going to have to run the ball to get the ball out of Cooper Rush's hand quickly with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. So I do think it's going to be a lower scoring game, but I do think the Eagles are going to win this one.
This is going to be a tremendous game. These are division rivals, and these are two teams that do not like each other on a very personal level. And if you know the history, you kind of know why. The Cowboys right now with Cooper Rush are undefeated. Let's just be clear that he has written them off to 4 straight wins in a row. So are we creating a quarterback controversy there? Jerry Jones says no, but we'll see how that goes depending on how well this team can keep it together and play as well as they have. Now, don't be confused by his numbers though. Even though they're going on to 4-0, that isn't all behind him. The running game has been solid behind Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott, and the defense is playing out of this world. That's what's really been getting those wins. So don't let the fact that Cooper Rush has 4 straight wins and the team is now 4-1 confuse you into thinking that Cooper Rush is the main deal with that. That's not what the case is, even though we do I do see some good matchups sometimes with him and CeeDee Lamb. Meanwhile, on the Eagles, it is because they really do have a good receiving game there. Jalen Hurts has Devonta Smith, and that's just always been great. And then they added A.J. Brown, which has been even more tremendous this season. And the run game's been solid. Goodness gracious, you guys. When I tell you this is going to be a hell of a game, it's going to be a hell of a game. At the end of the day, can I pick against the Eagles playing at home, knowing that defense is really going to step up and knowing that eventually, let's put it like this. At some point, the Eagles are going to have to catch an L. And at some point, Cooper Rush is going to have to catch an L. Which one is going to happen first? At the end of the day, it's the Eagles playing at home. I know they're going to give it all they got because they do not want to catch the L to the Cowboys in their house. I'm going to give it to the Eagles here. And last up, we got our Monday night matchup. We got the 2-3 Denver Broncos headed to Los Angeles to face the 3-2 Chargers. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Chargers, after losing to the Jaguars a couple weeks ago badly, came out and they won their last 2 games. They beat the Houston Texans. They beat the Cleveland Browns last week in a high-scoring game. Austin Eckler looked really good, finally got his first rushing touchdown. Justin Herbert looked as good as always. Keenan Allen still didn't play, but hopefully he'll be back for this game. With those players out there, I do think that they are going to be able to get the victory. I don't like what I've seen out of Denver this year. I don't like what I've seen out of Russell Wilson this year. He has done absolutely nothing. Obviously, his Geno Smith, who took over for him in Seattle, has done much better. I don't know whether it's him calling the plays or Nathaniel Hackett. There's different reports coming out of who's calling the plays, but it just looks like whoever it is doesn't know what they're doing. It looks like Russell Wilson really was just the system quarterback in that Seattle system, unlike other quarterbacks who leave and actually still stay up to their level, like Tom Brady. He hasn't. He's really dropped off. I just think this shows that he really was not as good as everybody thought he was. I think that he was really made for that system in Seattle. Now that he's not there, he doesn't know what to do. So with that said, I just think that it's going to be a tough year for the Denver Broncos. It continues here, and I'm going to pick the Chargers to win this AFC West divisional matchup.
Broncos are just so atrocious this year, just so terrible. And I think it's 50-50. I think some of it is Nathaniel Hackett is just making asinine play calls. And some of it is Russell Wilson and poor pocket decision and some of these passes that he's making that make no sense whatsoever. So it's a little column A and it's a little column B. And what is resulting in on the field is utter chaos and disappointment. I'm so disgusted with this team. I'm so disappointed in them and where they stand right now. Meanwhile, the Chargers, I tell you guys every year, I love Austin Eckler. I pick him every year in fantasy. Keenan Allen, if he's healthy and he's out there, he's going to be a threat, as is Mike Williams. This is another 1A, 1B receiver type situation, and Justin Herbert is going to give them a solid numbers. I cannot pick the Broncos in the game because I do not trust Nathaniel Hackett to make good play calls. And I do not trust Russell Wilson to even be able to complete some of the passes necessary to get it done, especially playing in Los Angeles. I'm giving this game to the Chargers. Well, you guys, that's all of our matchups. Dominic, give me one start and one sit in fantasy.
Yeah, this is the first week of buys, so you're going to have to worry about that when you're looking at your rosters. I'm going to give you a start. I'm going to give you a running back. We see that we're not going to have DeAndre Swift. We're not going to have Derrick Henry, Damian Pierce, or Josh Jacobs this week to be able to use. So instead of them, I did say the Eagles are going to have to try and get the run going this week. They're going to do that after not using the run too much last week. So I would take Miles Sanders in this game. If you have one of those other 4 running backs on buy, I would certainly use Miles Sanders this week. He should be a good play for you. And we were just talking about him. Russell Wilson's had a terrible year this year. I know that there's not many quarterbacks that you would start that are out this week on bye, but if you still have Russell Wilson ranked in your top 10 quarterbacks right now, something's wrong. He's not going to be a top 10 quarterback the rest of the year. He's not going to be a top 10 quarterback this week. So I would, even though it's good to have a player going on Monday night, I would certainly not let it be Russell Wilson because he's not going to do much this week.
Well, you guys, that's all the time that we have. I want to thank everybody again for listening. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at TheNFLGirl320. Dominic, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at EnvisionFF.
You can read more of my thoughts on SheKnowsProFootball.com. Dominic, where can they read your work?
You can read my work on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, TheAthletic.com, and SportsbookWire.com from USA Today.
That's all the time we have, you guys. See you back here next week.